So in this video, I'm going to talk about language, artificial intelligence, meaning, and ponder if these are all cases of what we might call apophenia, patternicity, type 1 errors, believing that something is out there when in fact it's just randomness. But before I get there, I do want to talk just for a second about an upcoming class I'll be teaching. It's on the Shift Network. If you're familiar with that, they do a really great job of putting it all together. And it'll be a 7-week course, and you do have to pay something for it. So I thought, and that's not till February of next year, but I thought what I would do, because I've been talking about doing a class here for the channel, but I think maybe I'll just do a couple live events, like a 2-hour, Sunday afternoon kind of thing where we can sort of just get together, maybe discuss a topic here or there, and just see how it goes. So anyway, we know humans are subject to seeing patterns when it's just randomness. Again, look at the face of the moon, and it's just random. You zoom in enough, it's all just random, but if you make it a little bit blurry, it looks like a face. And the same thing happens. There's a couple different instances of people saw a face on toast, and I think Michael Shermer talks about how much there's a piece of toast, and it went for, it's sold on eBay for something like, I don't know, tens of thousands of dollars. And so, we become very convinced and are willing to pay for these randomness that we impose patterns upon. And of course, we're all familiar with gambling, where you're, on a winning streak and you think you can predict the next couple, it was going up, now it's down. But, if it's a machine, and lots of forms of gambling are just random. Of course, the biggest case of this is the self. The self isn't there, but the thinking mind finds patterns with so little effort that we pretty much grew up believing that there was a self and that it was real and it was solid, consistent, and all this, when it was just a mirage. It was just an illusion. Now, in the new book, so if you check that out, it is on Amazon. I put the link in, and it won't be out till end of next summer. But I make a case that this apophenia is far more extensive than most people believe, and it's connected to the era of misplaced concreteness. Again, where we believe something is there, solid, real, when it's just, it only exists in the mental world. Things like government, personality, ownership, and in fact, it's very possible, because I've been working on this for a while, that even the two great plagues of our time, anxiety and depression, may be finding patterns that do not exist. So let's just take anxiety, and I've talked about this in other videos, and it's a very simple inquiry where we can follow this, and you say, well, I'm a very anxious person. Are you sure? Are you absolutely certain that what you're experiencing is anxiety? So the next time you feel like this and you say, I am anxious, or I have anxiety, really put it under the spotlight of consciousness. Well, what's happening? Well, maybe your heart's beating fast. Maybe you're sweating a little bit. But to believe in anxiety is to believe that you know the source of both the fast heart rate and the sweating. And maybe you just had too much caffeine. Maybe it's just a random fluke of the nervous system that your heart happens to be beating a little faster than normal. And so the point is that so many words that we use are simply made up. They're apophenia. We think that they point to something meaningful, which is to say in the real world, but they are nothing more than the words that we made up that may point to nothing. And something very interesting and strange happens when you really get into this, and certainly paradoxical as I go on talking, making sounds, and hoping that maybe there is a little bit of meaning behind at least some of them. And we can take a look at one of the most famous sentences, colorless green ideas sleep furiously. Now, this was meant to show that you could have a meaningless sentence that's grammatically correct. But what the suggestion has been, and certainly this is the main theme of the new book, is that many of the words that we point to have no more meaning than these colorless green ideas that are sleeping furiously. So I might say, oh, there's Janie. She's an excellent lawyer. Now, we could use those words to reference maybe what Janie is doing and certain behaviors, but that's not the way we use them. We use it as if there's really a personality in this meat suit, and that this lawyerness, that's a quality a person can have. And you can either be a really talented lawyer or not so talented. And you can, again, you could just use those to describe certain aspects of the real world, but that doesn't seem to be the way that we use them. And monks realize this. They realize that most of the words that we use are meaningless. That's why they stop talking. They're not doing some kind of practice. If they are, they're practicing not falling into the illusion of abstraction. But there is something to be said about just being in reality and taking a break from the abstract world. So what does this have to do with artificial intelligence? I talked a little bit about language and meaning. Well, I was recently playing around with ChatGPT, and one could say I was very, very impressed with it. I actually asked it to write me an outline of a book, or maybe it was write me a paragraph on no self in the style of Chris Niebauer. And it was very complimentary. It said some really nice things about this character, Chris. And then it put together what appeared to be a fairly impressive couple paragraphs. But there was also like something that seemed a little bit fake about it. But it was still very, very impressive. And so what I'm pointing out is that many of you, and I would suggest that you take a couple hours, play with ChatGPT. There's a free version, at least that seems to be what I stumbled on. And, you can have it write on any kind of paper you want. But the point is, are we really discovering something amazing? Or is this just another case of apophenia? Is it another case of a type 1 error where we think all these scribbles on this piece of paper are really impressive and filled with meaning? Or is the meaning just the thinking mind projecting it out into randomness? Now, John Searle was a philosopher, and he took a side of AI that all it does is manipulate symbols. But AI is not itself conscious, and it has no way to recognize the meaning of those symbols. So we might play with John Searle's argument and say, well, we also only think that there's meaning in there. In other words, there's no real difference between us and AI. We're both just manipulating symbols. But in our case, perhaps, we believe those symbols have meaning when perhaps they don't. And so if you really want to ponder this, play around with AI and go through this experience that your thinking mind might be very, very impressed with what it supposedly is witnessing. But then do an inquiry on this. Go through sentence by sentence and ask, is this really meaningful, or do I just think it is?